Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be going over a technique that I call mod circles, and the reason I do that is because the ultimate end result is, kind of a groovy, trippy, like retro looking soap that's circles. Now, the original technique that I found, it was called wall pour, but there are so many different techniques that use a wall pour method that I just felt like it didn't really distinguish this style from any others that use a wall pour. So I just call it mod circles for my own sake to kind of catalog it in my head. And that's that. So anyway, mod circles. I'm just doing the same thing that I did with the wood grain technique, and I poured my liquid oils into my melted hard oils, and it lowers the temperature significantly. So then I can get my lye in there. And but first I actually want to talk about this fragrance oil. So I'm pouring in what's called Juicy Pineapple, and it's from Nature's Garden Candles, which is one of my favorite fragrance places ever. And I'd never used this fragrance before, but like what I do with all my other fragrances that I'm accustomed to, I just pour them in my oils first and then I put my lye in. Now I didn't know how this was going to behave at the time, so it was going to be a surprise to me, but ultimately it worked out really well. The only information I had on how this fragrance would behave is from their website, so I was just going with it, and yeah, it turned out pretty well. But back to the soap itself. This mixture here, after all is said and done, is around 81 degrees, so that's a good temperature to work with. And I want to get this to just emulsed. I don't want to go into trace or anything like that. So similar to wood grain, I just want it to be emulsed. So I would liken it to probably, like, I don't even know if it would be whole milk, maybe like 2% milk, but when you lift up your stick blender, you're not going to see a trace on the surface, but you're going to feel that there's like a thickness to it that tells you that it's emulsed. But once I get it to that point, I'm actually splitting my batch into thirds. So I had a 44-ounce batch, and it was about 13.3 ounces per color. One portion is uncolored, so I measured out, the 13.3 for the uncolored, and then for orange and purple. And I didn't show me mixing up those colors because it was the same way I did in the wood grain technique. I just took my mica, measured it out, and mixed it in some of the liquid coconut oil, so the MCT oil. And I do that to kind of bump up my super fat in a way. So my calculation, and this is a topic for a totally different video, but I usually do a 3% super fat, and typically it's 5% for most soap makers, but that little extra MCT kind of gives it that little extra in there. But anyway, so I have my mold oriented in a vertical position. It doesn't really matter because you'll see throughout this that I tend to move it around. But really what you're wanting to do here is pour kind of down the wall, which is why it got the name wall pour. But you're creating these little semicircles, and as they push into each other, they kind of morph and make, little blobs. And I had no rhyme or reason what I was doing here. I just wanted to make sure that they kind of alternated, and I got to a point where I could do really just one color at a time because it was getting annoying kind of flipping things around. But anyway, but you could see how there are circles forming here, and I decided to put some on the ends, and then later on I'll put some on the top, just because I don't know, it just gave it a lot more character that way, I suppose. But I really like this color combination because it looks a lot more retro. I don't know, I just like the purple-orange combination. But I'll let you just kind of watch go back and forth here, and that's all this is as far as the technique. Just stepping in here really quick to tell you that occasionally I was kind of shaking the mold because as the batter starts to thicken up, and this batter is not thick by any means, it's what I would categorize as maybe light to medium trace. I just wanted to kind of settle the circles into themselves, otherwise they would just kind of pool on top of the previous layer instead of pushing it out. So really, in this technique, you want the circles to push out, so it kind of has like this radial effect. And yeah, I guess the thicker it got, the more it just kind of sat on top instead of pushing it out. So I kind of jiggled the mold a little bit to get it to do that. So what you're seeing me do here is I put a piece of, well, I have this handmade frame that I put over my mold and then a piece of glass over that. And that just came from like a cheap Michaels frame, I think. But I have this little makeshift oven that I have in my soap room that's got a heating pad in it, and right now my crock pot is occupied, so I am putting it in my little makeshift heater box. So that's why it has this protection around it, because I'm going to stick a towel on top of that and I don't want the top to get all messed up. But as with always, I scrape every little drop out to put into a mold, and I've got my little owl and I've got my little bee. And yeah, I'm just putting the colors in there, and those will be just soaps for home. Eventually, I don't know, I might end up selling these at some point, just because I collect so many of them that I don't know if it's something that we'll use in our lifetime, just with as much as I make. But anyway, look out for that, I guess. But yep, cleanup is important too. And here we are the next day unmolding. You can see I got some soda ash on the top, which is fine, and I'll take that off later. But in this technique, you cut it the same way you cut wood grain, because you want those circles to show. So here I am, my whole loaf measures 8 inches across, but since I want my width of the bar, if it's standing upright, to be 2.5 inches across, I need to trim off about 1/2 inch. So usually I do about 1/4 inch from either end, just to cut off the end pieces and have samples for people. And that's what I'm doing there. So I measured 2.5 inches across after I got the 1/4 inch. And I don't know, it looks pretty cool. So you can cut it this way if you want, but then it wouldn't really be mod circles. It would just be kind of like a tiger stripe swirl, and I think that's kind of what that looks like. But even though tiger stripe is a little bit different than that. So anyway, so 2.5 inches across, and you could see like the top there, just like in wood grain. That's kind of neat, really. You just flip it over to the side and cut it in half, because each of those fingers is 1 inch wide, and it turned out pretty cool. I like some of those where you got like this definitive, just very defined circles. I didn't show it in the first one, but I did end up trimming off the top there because I wanted to get rid of that soda ash on that first brick. So all I'm doing here is just trimming it off. Usually I don't like to do that if the top looks pretty good, because I just feel like it's a waste of soap. And you know, if I sell this to somebody, I want them to have the whole thing. So I just kind of jiggle it a little bit because I think it looks really cool. But yeah. Sometimes that glass, when I put it in my little hot box, does prevent soda ash. I don't know if it's just because it keeps the moisture in and like just kind of rains the moisture back down on the surface, but sometimes it doesn't. So I don't know. I don't know what my theory is on that, but here they are. And here's the final pictures after I've done all the trimming and all that stuff that goes behind it. And if you want to pause the video and take a snapshot or just write down what I did there, that's totally fine. But I have a task for you guys. I would like you to name the soap. So leave a comment what you think this soap should be named. I did not pick out a name for it. I only made this as the tutorial. So I would love it if you would come up with something clever. I usually name things kind of weird and unconventional. So yeah, I invite all kinds of comments on that. But that's it for this tutorial. If you have any questions, just again, leave me a comment and I'll talk to you later. Bye.